Don't sell your XRP. The wealthiest crypto holders don't sell their crypto at the top. Okay. They're borrowing against their holdings to avoid immediate tax gains. All right. Most investors have no idea that this strategy even exists. And I've worked with some of the wealthiest families here in the US, and I want to reveal something that they do to live off of their assets and their crypto. And they hold it for forever without selling it. By the end of this video, you'll learn the exact step-by-step strategy that the wealthy use to hold their appreciating assets forever while funding their lifestyle, and how you can do it too with your position in XRP. So what is this concept even called? If you don't sell your assets or your crypto, how do you get money? Like what does that even look like? How does this work? Well, many people have coined the term infinite banking, which effectively means your assets that you own continue to go up in value over time. This can be done through an insurance policy or a bunch of other structured products, but basically you just borrow against those assets. Debt is tax-free. Now, you do have to pay the interest payments on this stuff. Well, unless it's done through the right type of insurance policy. But for the most part, this is what the wealthiest people in the world do that are billionaires. They own large amounts of equity in publicly traded stocks. They just borrow against those positions to be able to fund their lifestyle. And upon their death, that gets repaid by the appreciated stock, right? So most people think they have two options when it comes to crypto. They can either hold it for, the upside, or they can sell it. But selling creates an immediate long-term capital gains tax obligation, which is typically somewhere between 15 and 20% at the federal level here in the US. Other jurisdictions, it's different, and that's just long-term capital gains. That's not if you bought it this year, which is going to be taxed as regular income. So combined with state tax, you could be looking at somewhere between 25 and 35% on the long-term capital gains, and even up to 50% if it's short-term capital gains on your holdings when you liquidate. That means sell for a profit. Okay, so this means if you had $1 million Bitcoin position, you'd have to give up somewhere between $250,000 and $350,000 in taxes just to take those profits. That's 25 or 30%. Like, that's a lot of money to give to the US government for them to then go use it however they're going to use it. Why not keep it in your pocket? The wealthiest people use borrowing strategies with life insurance and traditional assets, and they've been doing it for decades. High net worth individuals often borrow against their stocks and their holdings instead of selling. And it's pretty reasonable interest rates and pretty decent LTV. And according to reports, Elon Musk used his stock holdings as collateral for loans to be able to buy Twitter. $40 billion for that acquisition. He borrowed against his SpaceX stock and was able to buy Twitter. No tax implications on that, by the way, and was able to make that acquisition and write that off against his other income. So the same borrowing approach is now available for digital assets through institutional custody that we have at Digital Wealth Partners and Digital Ascension Group. We use a tri-party agreement. We have people that are willing to provide liquidity against it. We can get you access to lines of credit for your digital assets. So a concept that your assets are going to continue to appreciate can potentially become a way that you could pay off these loans over the long term. So as an example, let's say you borrowed against your XRP today. It's $2.50. And you're not going to borrow against a lot of it, okay? Right now we're getting 45% LTV, so maybe you borrow against 10%. You got $1 million in XRP, you need $100,000. Cool. You put up, $1 million worth of XRP. Even if we have volatility in the price, you're probably not going to get margin called. It would have to go down a lot for that to happen, but that's tax-free money, and you're going to be paying, let's call it 1% a month right now on that note. So $1,000 a month for a $100,000 line of credit, and you could roll that. So as the assets appreciate, you could borrow more money and pay off the note with that. You could set a portion of it aside. Let's say you set aside $12,000 because that's what it's going to cost you over the year, over the term of the loan to cover the interest. And now you have the rest of that tax-free, which is still cheaper than selling it and dealing with 25 or 30% tax if you're, depending on what you're in. For long-term capital gains, if it's short-term capital gains, it can be even more than that. So using an appreciating asset is a normal deal. This is done in traditional finance all the time. You can borrow against it. There's an LTV or loan to value ratio, and there's always interest that is, accrued over time. If you're doing it inside of an insurance policy and the assets continue to appreciate, the cash value of the insurance policy pays off that debt. Most people still want to make some payments there during their lifetime. But as the asset continues and the market continues to perform, you're going to get more and more access to liquidity. And you can pay interest on what you borrow, and the borrowed funds themselves aren't taxable as income, right? On long-term or short-term capital gains or as income. None of that's taxable because it's debt. Debt is not taxable. So with proper planning, various strategies exist to manage those debt obligations. And again, we're going to get into that if you'll stick around for the rest of this video.